everybody. Again, welcome into the Color Gemstone Academy. I'm your instructor, Paul Deasy, and this is my YouTube channel called very appropriately, Paul Deasy Gemstones. Before we get started on this is going to be episode 20 in our Q&A series. This is where you guys get to ask the questions and I answer you. But I thought it'd be kind of fun because I started to think for the people that are really new. We've been doing this now for over a year. And we have 63 gem episodes. We have this is our 20th question and answer series episodes. And if you're kind of new to the channel and you're wondering where you might want to start, I had some fun looking over, I guess it's been a little bit over a year. And these are the top 10 subjects of all time based on your views. So number one, most popular lesson has been Turquoise 101. It's kind of a primer on all things about turquoise. Episode 2 comes in at number 2, and it's what does it take to be a good gemologist, where we describe, it's more than just knowing the chemical composition of a gemstone. Episode 40 comes in at number 3, and it's called Turquoise, Real, Simulated Fakes, and Wannabes, and that's kind of a fun lesson. Episode 22, number 4 in the list, is Kingman Turquoise, and you get to see a little bit of the Kingman mine. Coming in 5th was Ethiopian Opals, a very popular gemstone now, so that may be a place that you want to start. Episode 8 came in next, which is Sleeping Beauty Turquoise. Episode 23 is on number 8 Turquoise. Number 8 coming in was Welcome to the Color Gemstone Academy. It's just a little kind of teaser I have at the beginning, but hey, it's coming in at number 8. Number 9 is an episode on gemstone treatments, which is very interesting. A lot of people don't realize that there's certain things treatments that are made to gems to improve the color or performance of a gemstone. And finally, number 10, coming in at number 10 is Labradorite, and that was episode 17. All right, as I mentioned, this is the question and answer series. You're going to see me looking off camera a little bit because I have my computer in front of me, because I take your questions and I put them in the computer so that I can read them to you and then give you the answers. So let's get right into it, shall we? Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, if you've not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. I know that's a scary word because you think you're going to have to pay something. Nope, there's no credit card that we're going to ask for. These lessons are absolutely free. But when you subscribe, it allows me to make money in other ways with ads and things like that. So I'm never going to charge you a penny for these lessons. All right, first one comes in from Ben Wolf from one of our top 10 episodes. He was watching episode 8, which is Sleeping Beauty Turquoise, and he says, he kind of skipped through the Zachary method. I had to go back multiple times to make sure it wasn't just me being really stoned. By the way, that was spectacular. It really did make me laugh. So I loved your comment, Ben. It's funny being stoned while watching a lesson on gemstones and then asking me about a stone being stoned. I just thought that was kind of funny. But believe it or not, as brilliant and funny as your comment was, believe it or not, I was trying to simplify the Zachary method. The Zachary method is a stabilization method for those of you that haven't seen that lesson yet. Most turquoise in the world is stabilized because turquoise is a very porous material, and the traditional way of stabilizing turquoise was impregnating it with a resin, sometimes even plastics, things like that, because turquoise is porous, and if you don't fill those pores with something, eventually lotions and oils from your skin will seep into the stone and it will change color over time. So they stabilize it. In the case of Sleeping Beauty and other high-grade turquoises, they use something called the Zachary method. Now the Zachary method is very complicated. It's also proprietary. So in other words, you're never going to see somebody tell you exactly how to do it because it's a proprietary method. And one of the only ones I know who's employing it, he's not the inventor of it. The inventor was actually an electrician by trade, but he was a gem enthusiast. So he found a way to pass using no dyes or pigments or plastics or resins, but it involves treating that gem introducing electrical field while they're doing that to make the stone stronger and fill the pores without having to use any artificial means. So it is very complicated, and if I had just read to you what I know about the Zachary method, that would have put you to sleep more than being stoned. I guarantee you that. But anyway, I do appreciate your question, and I appreciate your humor on that one. Okay, coming in, Tanya Osier, or OCA, don't know how to pronounce that. And this is from last week's Q&A series. And she said, I learned so much from your videos. Thank you for doing these. Well, Tanya, you're quite welcome. And literally, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't people like you that were interested in learning about gemstones. So I appreciate you watching. And if you have any specific questions, send them through. I'll be happy to answer them for you. Now we get to another familiar name. I already answered her separately through the through my YouTube channel. And this is from Glenna Oro, and this is from last week's Q&A series as well. She says, what are your thoughts on rhodium plating? This is a great question. I brought some sterling jewelry to my local jeweler to sell, and they rejected all the sterling that was rhodium plated. I know that rhodium plating prevents sterling from tarnishing, but I was unaware that it really has no resale value, even though it still has a 925 stamped on the piece. Thank you. And I told Glenna, I'm really impressed with her question. She comes up with really relevant questions every single week, and I said she must have been a very inquisitive as a child. And it reminded me of when my kids were very young. And, and they'd say, Dad, why? And then you give them an answer, and then say, well, why? And they just kept on going. But anyway, it is a great question, and it's an important question because right now silver and gold are reaching all-time highs. And anytime there's any hint of inflation, the prices of these precious metals go up, and people use that as a hedge against inflation. So a lot of people I think silver's up 47% this year. I think gold's up 25%, something in that neighborhood. I don't remember the exact numbers. But yes, your local jewelers will buy your silver from you, and then they will tell you what the going rate is on the price per ounce. They will make you an offer, and then they're going to melt it down, and whatever they pay to have it melted plus the cost of the silver is basically they're going to pay you something, and everybody wins. The jewelers are happy with it. It's another revenue stream. You're happy with it because you can get some money on jewelry you're not using anymore. The problem comes with that rhodium plating. Now that became very popular probably 10, 15 years ago, not only with the shopping channels, but also jewelers in general. All silver over time is going to tarnish. Nothing you can do about that. I mean, you can polish it, you can do a lot of different things to it. But what happened with a lot of jewelers and the shopping channel jewelry business is they put a thin layer of rhodium on top of that. Now, rhodium is very bright, in fact, brighter than sterling silver, so it looked really, really good, and also it wouldn't tarnish because that silver was not exposed to the elements because it had that very thin layer of rhodium. Now, rhodium's not cheap. It's a very expensive metal that's derived as a part of platinum. But the problem with especially smaller pieces of jewelry, not heavy pieces that are made in sterling silver that have that coating, it becomes more expensive for the jeweler to try and recover it in the melting it, because now you have two different metals that are not congruent with each other. And they found it was more of a pain or more costly to try and separate out the silver and the rhodium than you could get for either precious metal separately. So unfortunately, it's not a good place if you have rhodium plated silver, and a lot of silver out there, jewelry today out there is. And what I said to Glenna was either, donate that jewelry piece. Maybe there's an auction in your hometown. Somebody might have, you can write that off as a contribution, or give it to someone in your family, or have that garage sale that you've always wanted to have, and get the things that you want to scale down and get rid of, including some of your jewelry, and maybe someone would enjoy wearing it again. So I hope that answers your question. And Glenna, I know a lot of other people have probably had that question. Okay, next up for a comment, more than a question, is Dakota Henderson, and she was watching episode 63, Jade. That's the most recent gem lesson. She says, "Love Jade, thank you for today's lessons." And every once in a while I'll read those too, because even if you don't have a question and you just want to say, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing, I appreciate that, and I read those as well. And looking at how long-winded, as usual, I'm getting to be, I think this will be the final question of this week, but I'm going through more and more of these so I can try and get to them as many as I can, but some of them require long answers, and this is going to be another one. This is from Sala Nagina or Nagina, not sure, from Q&A series episode 18. And it says, "Hi Paul, amazing video, enjoyed the Q&A as always, very informative. Can you make a video on agate and the different types of agates in detail? I would appreciate it a lot." Okay, now agate is a very, very interesting, and this is a great question. So my answer to your question of, can I give you a detailed version of all the different types of agates? Sort of or not really. And the reason is, well, let's talk about quartz. In fact, I did, if you remember our lessons, let me see, what were they? Episode 32 was quartz part 1. Episode 33 was quartz part 2. And what I was doing in those different episodes, quartz is the most plentiful gemstone on Earth. It is silicon dioxide. Now there's two different versions of quartz product. One would be the traditional crystal gems like you think of with, well, let's see, like an amethyst. Okay, there's a little amethyst geode. That's quartz. Here is a citrine. Geode. That's, and you know that the golden color citrine, or you think of something like prasiolite or white quartz, things like that. That would be one form of silicon dioxide, and that would be, you know, most of smoky quartz, things like that. Most of you are familiar with those. Then you get into something called a cryptocrystalline quartz, which is more of a chalcedony quartz, which I went into in that lesson. And there are a lot of what they call banded agates. Here, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. You know, there's a ton of different colors, varieties of banded agates, including, you know, your petrified woods. Petrified woods isn't really wood, it's wood that has been replaced by quartz, chalcedony, over the years. Another example of a bunch of different types. This is an agate, and this is a banded agate that you see there. It happens to form druzy in the middle of that. But there's just all of these different varieties, and it would be, I mean, let's face it, for me to do, I think 6 weeks of lessons on garnet, took me a month and a half to go through the different varieties of garnet and explain the nuances between them. Well, now we're getting into literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different versions of agates, landscape agates, tuxedo agates, and sometimes they're named after places where they're discovered, like the Botswana agate. Sometimes it's just a proprietary name that somebody gives it, you know, it's an agate, but because of the trace elements where it was, sometimes they have little agates that look like grapes, they call it grape agate. So it'd be very impossible, but I'm always going to be able to pick and choose a couple of the more prominent ones, like fire agate. I get some questions about that. I think that's a spectacular agate. As I said, landscape agate, there's a bunch of different jaspers. There's striped. There's, again, hundreds and hundreds of different varieties. And even when I go to gem shows where I see a new variety, somebody usually took the time to give it a name, maybe even trademark that name. It would be impossible to cover all of them, but I love agates and jaspers, so I will continue to do some lessons, including some very good lessons on that one. So I hope that answers your question. Maybe it wasn't perhaps the answer you were hoping for, but Sala, it is literally, there's so many varieties, and that's what I love so much about the gem business. Well, I'm going to stop that here for now. We'll get to more of your questions next week. I try and keep these a little bit more brief, like 15 minutes or less. This one probably went a little bit over time, but you're asking great questions, and I will continue to answer them. Remember, if you have not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help me out. It helps me keep these lessons free for you. And from time to time, you might even see some ads, and I usually make them skippable. So if it's not something you're interested in, you can just hit skip the video after a few seconds. If it is something you're interested in, it is a way that I monetize without having to charge you anything for this. So thank you so much. We'll see you all next week for our next gem lesson and our next Q&A lesson. Thanks for watching.